This is the Subsystem demo presentation for Group 3 Fast Versatile Video Coding. The team members are Michael Romero, Cameron Veit, and Connor Veit. For starters, we'll talk about our objective and our approach. The goal of the Fast Versatile Video Coding project is to speed up the encoding process of a VVC encoder. The reason for the need of a faster encoding process is that VVC can be used to create higher definition video at the cost of processing time. As such, by reducing the processing time, we can create a net benefit over prior encoding methods. This will be done by using a neural network to replace one of the steps. The current goal is to have a neural network replace both the segmentation and choice parts of the encoding process. However, the current focus is on replacing the segmentation part of the process, as it allows the VVC encoder to work as designed, with a faster speed, rather than changing the process by which it works. Next up is the diagram of the entire system. And this diagram comprises of three main subsystem units. These units consist of the AI unit, the encoder connector unit, and the talk unit. All of these units run on a single operating system and are made up of processes that use the basic message sharing techniques to communicate, such as shared memory or discrete message sharing operations. The AI unit takes the video information and uses it to send the segmented video to the encoder connector unit. The encoder connector unit then either uses the segmentations to encode the video if the talk unit is active, or simply runs as normal to encode the video if the talk unit is inactive. It should also be noted that the encoder connector unit is actually just a modification of the basic VVC code to include a toggle boolean, which the toggle unit allows the user to change on and off. My name is Connor Veit, and I am working on the AI subsystem. This is the information flow diagram of the AI subsystem, and the subsystem works by taking a sample video, getting its encoded video data, then putting that encoded video data in the VVC encoder, which then gets the log file of the encoder mode chosen and macro block characteristics from that video data and sends it to the learning algorithm. The learning algorithm then uses transformed weights from the neural networks to most efficiently encode the video.
For my contributions to the AI training subsystem, I created a log parser that could be used to parse the on-disk log file into meaningful in-memory data structures. This involved learning the format of the log generated by the VVC encoder, learning to know when a coding tree unit section began and ended, and having logic to extract attribute information from the log file into attributes of a coding tree unit into the in-memory data structure. The coding tree unit can have over 50 attributes, and not all are present in all cases. So this required reading a preamble section that all lines of the log had, and iterate for every regular expression until I found a match for that line of code. This would allow logic to be chosen to extract the data from that line and insert it as the appropriate attribute in the coding tree data unit structure. In its final version, there should not be any failure to find matches. During testing, a failure to find a match indicated that an attribute was not accounted for in the data structure, so a new attribute, matching logic, and insertion logic were created.
Okay, for the log parser, I have three different files. This is for the coding unit block, and here's all the different attributes. There's a lot. There's like 50 different attributes, and not all of them are going to be present in every coding unit block. This uses a holder class, so it can be stored as an object instead of as a raw value. So it's easier to check for null values, indicating that the coding unit doesn't have the value for that attribute. And it also stores the coding unit blocks in a frame. And this is the logic for the log parser. You start by there's a section where there's that has just a summary for the entire log parser, and you skip all that. Then this is the preamble, which finds the first line of coding unit block, and it gets all the data about the coordinates and the frame number and the other attribute values. And this is where it starts grabbing each attribute line. And what it does here is it grabs the attribute name and then it looks for it inside this entire switch block. And then when it does that, it will use this logic here to extract the value for each attribute. These are all different logics for different attributes, because some attributes need different logic than others to extract the value. So you can't just grab the name and grab the value. It's a little more complicated than that. And I'm going to run the script. And right now I'm telling it to print out the value of the coordinates for each coordinate unit block followed by its dimensions. And now it's loaded in memory, and it will be used in a larger application to feed a learning algorithm to create a machine learning model.
I'm Connor Veit, and this is my current progress on the AI subsystem. First, the subsystem separates an image in the 128 by 128 blocks, though there are a few 96 by 128 blocks because the image is 480 by 640, which doesn't perfectly divide up with its height. And then it checks to see if those 128 by 128 blocks perfectly work with the masks having all the same number. And if it does, it basically saves that, it goes into the next block. But if it doesn't, it does two things. If it's 96, it either tries splitting it, so it's 32, 64, 64, 32, or all in the 32. It does the 32 by 64 first, tries doing the 64 by 32 second, and tries doing the all three third. And with that, if the 32 by 64, it can split into three variations: the entire image, the top, the 32, and the 64. And the same with the 64 by 32. But the 32 by 32 by 32 only will grab the middle one. However, if none of them are correct, it grabs all three and makes them be in the next loop. And basically, after that, it grabs the next block, which is of any, which is the saved block size, and starts trying to separate that one. And basically, that's when the block with height other than 96 comes in. It splits vertically or horizontally, 3 modes for each, as discussed with the first two examples in 96. And basically, it's either the first half, or the second half. And it does. However, with this, there's one of two solutions, because if the corresponding value is 32, then it also separates the other half of the block into two 16 by 16 parts. But if that isn't the case, it just moves on and saves it. And basically, there are also another two derivatives. If there is no split whatsoever, it either gets all four to be split later, or if the size 32 by 32 splits into the four 16 by 16 blocks and puts that in the list to be split. And it basically loops through that until the entire the entire block is properly separated. Then it ends the splitting of the block and moves on to do the next block, and then it continues doing that process until it gets through all the blocks for the image, in which it ends running the subsystem. So I'm Connor Veit, and this is the how the AI subsystem works. First, you need to install this, and then you need to run these two functions to basically set up the detectron. Then you need to run this section to get the example image. If you're doing a video, there's something later you can do, but I don't really need to show that. I'll just basically be grabbing the file and that sort of stuff. This is basically the example that I'm going to be using. Then you need to run this one to get the mask of the image, which will be used for the segmenting of the image. It takes long the first time, but after that, it's typically pretty quick. Additionally, like I can show you after I run once. And then after another thing is that this is using Google Colab, which is actually really slow browser. If there's any other browser, this would have been done like a while ago. So basically, after this step, you can then start actually like segmenting the image and getting the actual data. And okay, so I'm going to quickly run this again to show you how quickly it goes around this time. Like that. Takes 4 seconds. And basically now I can actually start separating the block, and this is how I do so. And basically, I have a whole bunch of functions here, which are basically if you go through them, that's how you basically get run it to actually get the separate the image properly. But I have a large function down here, which is the entire thing all at once. So I'll be running this. Takes about a second to run the entire thing, so 5 seconds per image on a very slow browser. And so now I separated mask block contains all the blocks. So I can do separated mask blocks to show you the results of this. As seen here. I have counted these. Each of these is at minimum 16 by 16 and typically a little larger. And I can show you the total block count by doing block counter, which is 512. And I can also show you that it actually completed the entire all the blocks initially separated, which would be accomplished by checking basic block counter and current basic block counter, basic block count. As such, I can show that this entire subsystem. I am Veit, and this is the information flow diagram of the toggle subsystem, the subsystem that I'm working on. At the current stage of development, we have this subsystem has not been fully developed, as we are currently discovering the locations where changes have to take place in the VVC code in order to incorporate the subsystem. Currently, we have found the fact that the XCompressCU and the XCheckMode split functions call on each other recursively in the enccu.cpp file. In this file, they call each other recursively to determine the width and height of the segmented blocks. This segmented size is held in the temp CS area L width and temp CS area L height variables. And as these functions call on each other recursively, it starts at a size of 128 by 128 and constantly decreases. It's important to note that these functions are called in the anticipated toggle off version of the toggle subsystem. On the other hand, when we turn the toggle on, there will be code to connect to the segmentation AI. As currently planned, a config file will be used to set the toggle variable. Furthermore, it will act as a Boolean function using if to exclude either the code to connect to the segmentation AI or the normal step events with the recursive loop between the XCompressCU and XCheckMode split functions. Next up, we'll talk about the actual code. The code mostly includes a few areas of interest. For example, there is the fact that you can identify the top left corner of each block in the temp CS area LX and temp CS area LY variables, with the X and Y variables for top left corner respectively. Additionally, you can find the width of the block and the height of the block using the same function. These variables change over the course of the XCompressCU and the XCheckMode split calling on each other recursively, with the with checkpoint split being called with temp CS inside compress CU, and X compress CU being called within check mode split using temp sub CS, which becomes temp CS in X compress CU. This leads to a recursive effect wherein the blocks continuously decrease in size until it finds the optimal block size. For example, it tries 128 by 28, decides to split it, so you get 60 by 4 by 64, decides to split, 32 by 32, decides to split, and it repeats this process until it gets a block size. Then it continues doing this until the entire overall 128 by 128 block is filled in, and then it goes on to the next 128 by 128 block. Additionally, it should be noted that in unit partitioner, you can edit the min depth max depth to change the amount of times that the 128 by 128 block can be partitioned. For example, you can have it only be partitioned to a 64 by 64, or even just not be able to be partitioned at all. And also, through testing, we have I've determined that by using current test mode type ETM split BT split BV TT agent split TTV, I can actually disable certain types of splitting with this, and if this code is included, the only type of splitting allowed is quarter splitting. As such, I will display such here. As you can see, it only splits in a way that that both of them split. That is a quarter split where it splits into 4 pieces. So that is basically the code as is known, and that's the end of my subsystem demo.